we explore more complex disarms with the long shield.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
In one of our last videos, we explored how we could use the medieval dueling shield or long shield or Stechschild to disarm an opponent. And we already know there are more types of disarms and we will explore a bit more now. What we can do after getting an attack with a sword from the opponent and redirecting the force, we can now change the grip to the shield. We leave our left hand on the shield, but free now our right hand with the sword. And in this situation, we can perform disarms with the sword, while the shield, standing on the ground but still being controlled with the left hand or offhand, can be used to press against the blade of the opponent in order to avoid that this blade cuts us. We can find one of these possibilities for each of the angles. These are classical types of disarms that we see, for example, with the sword or with the messer. I'm not sure whether I have seen exactly this execution with the Stechschild, with the dueling shield. So this is, in my view, an option that we can derive from other techniques in the fencing manuals, but I'm not entirely sure whether it has been explored at the time with this type of weapon combinations. We will also see that this gives us an interesting training frame for how we can make the transition from the half sword grip, where we have both weapons in both hands, to the case where we have one weapon in the left hand, in this case the shield, and the sword in the right hand. And this is unfortunately not trivial. Also, we for the first time will see holding the shield with one hand is demanding, and we can of course always place the shield on the ground and just move it with the offhand. But sometimes it might be necessary to hold it in the air, so to say, so not with the tip on the ground. Then we often have to drag the shield closer to the body and, for example, put it onto our hips or on our shoulders in order to be able to hold it. With angle 1 and angle 2, we find very simple solutions that can easily be derived from what we already know and that we can also find with the sword or with the stick. Angle 3 is already more challenging, and that's probably due to the fact that this is a low angle and we have redirected it, and now we would like, usually, to move the weapon first down and then up again to get to the disarming point. But with our big shield, we have to place it somewhere and we cannot easily lift all the weaponry now again. And we are somehow bound to disarm now in a low position. This is no problem. In fact, all disarms have 4 possible positions in space. We will have to explore that in a series of dedicated videos, that each disarm and also each arm lock in fact has 4 flavors. That's maybe how we can describe it, that often also give different directions. This disarm here is rarely shown with sticks. I have seen it with swords. I have seen it with the Bowie knife. So when you go and look for James Keating's disarming methods, this one here appears. I also think I have seen it with some of the pronged weapons, so that will work with a Zai, and it will also work with a Ba Chan Dao. So with the weaponry that we have for Wing Chun Kung Fu, this will definitely also work. But we can here see it also works with sword and with the long shield. What really embarrassed me a bit is that I did not find a proper solution for angle 4. We will come to that. Usually angle 4 has the same problem as angle 3. It requires a certain amount of lifting, but at the same time it's not only problematic to lift here, it's also problematic to place ourselves in a way to the shield and to the weapon of the opponent that we can effectively disarm. And I think what I did here is simple cheating. I did not have now a symmetric type of arrangement of disarms, because we can see again angle 1, we did a one circle disarm. Against angle 2, we did a one cross disarm. Against angle 3, we did a two circle disarm. And if you check our other videos where we talk about disarms, you know that we should now do a two cross disarm, but I can simply not find a way to easily come to this position. And that's due to the fact that we come from this strange half sword position where both hands originally gripped shield and sword together. So I think we see an asymmetry here. What I simply do is I cheat and I do a one circle as well. And this asymmetry probably comes to this specific situation of weapons. We need to explore that more, whether we see this breaking of the symmetry also in other instances where we have shield or large shields in this case and a sword, or whether this is very, very specific to the long shield. I cannot exclude that. That's in fact something I'm really, really deeply interested. Our predictions from our shoulder are of course that we see a certain symmetry in these movements, and so far when it comes to disarms and locks, we have seen that exactly this happens in a lot of situations. But now we come to a situation where we break this symmetry. And this is something that we often see in martial arts, that they have broken symmetries, and there are often reasons for that that are different from the biomechanics. Sometimes these might be cultural or also social aspects, that certain movements or actions are seen as too, I don't want to say impolite, but you know where I'm going. And therefore, these actions are simply not performed. Here, it seems to be a limitation because we get a direction into our actions due to the way the sword is held, although the shield is very symmetric. And we get an additional problem here because separating the two from each other is a specific move that probably only works in one direction. This comes to a very similar problematic as we see it when drawing the sword. When drawing the sword, we also see an asymmetry. Why? Because we have the sword on our left hip. So that also gives a very, very asymmetric type of starting point for our action. And the same thing seems to apply here for separating the shield from the sword. This is an interesting aspect because so far drawing the sword was a very unusual action and had no major comparative situation. Now we seem to have something that sees the same type of restrictions, and we definitely need to explore these two in comparison, whether we see the same type of restrictions, because if this is the case, then we might be able to reconstruct a general pattern that influences both aspects here, and that could be maybe also used in other situations when it comes to that. That's the core of martial science: comparison, prediction, testing, and this is a very interesting finding. Although I'm still embarrassed that I did not figure it out, I hope we can show in future videos what I have not properly managed to come up with here. But on the other hand, it's a very fascinating case, and I hope this will trigger some discussions in the future. For the moment, I hope we could inspire you, and I hope to see you around next time.